Put simply, no, psychedelics are not addictive. And I want to be very clear from the start here what I mean when I say that. Because when I say that psychedelics are not addictive, what I'm talking about is physical dependency. Psychedelics are not going to create a situation in which your bodily chemistry is reliant on the presence of a psychedelic in order to function normally. In the case of something such as alcohol, when a person becomes addicted to alcohol, their body needs to have alcohol present, otherwise it can't function normally. And this is where we get withdrawal from. Because when you remove the alcohol from that person's bodily system, then the body doesn't know how to act without alcohol in it. So withdrawal happens, and the body then has to adapt to how to function without the presence of alcohol in it. And psychedelics do not create that environment. There is an important caveat here, however. And in case it isn't obvious already, this video does not promote the use of any scheduled substance, and it exists only for education and harm reduction purposes. With that being said, let's get back into it. So the important caveat that I want to bring up actually comes from the definition of addiction as per the DSM-5, and that definition looks like this: a chronic and relapsing condition which is characterized by compulsive drug seeking and continued use despite adverse effects. So looking at that definition, it can be very easy to see how one might be considered addicted to a psychedelic, because that definition mentions nothing about the physical response that the body has to an addiction, and it is only concerned with the mental response that a person has to a compound. So with psychedelics, what can happen and what has happened, there are numerous cases of this, is that a person will continue ingesting a psychedelic, such as LSD, very frequently and even daily in pursuit of that trip state, of that heightened sense of your consciousness that psychedelics are so great at producing. The problem with this is that tolerance to psychedelics builds very fast. I mean, one dose of acid is going to skyrocket your tolerance to acid, and taking the exact same amount a day later is not going to produce anywhere near the same effects that you had, the day previous. So people who ingest psychedelics quite frequently or even daily are going to be building their tolerance to the psychedelic so incredibly fast that I kind of said that word weird. Wow, now I'm slurring and stuttering. Shit, did I take acid? No, I'm kidding. Backtrack just a bit. So someone who is taking acid so frequently, or any psychedelic for that matter, but they're ingesting it so frequently that their tolerance is just skyrocketing. And 100 micrograms of LSD is no longer going to cut it for them, or even 3 grams of mushrooms is no longer going to cut it for them. They are very quickly, and in a very few days even, are going to need to be taking upwards of 3, 4, 5, 600 micrograms just to get the same effect that they had from the 100 microgram dose. Now obviously these numbers are not exact, but I'm trying to emphasize the fact that your tolerance to a psychedelic builds so fast that the dosage you need to achieve those initial results that you got on that very first trip is going to be much higher than the dosage that you were previously taking. So then it becomes very expensive and very hard to acquire the means for the trip, and then you can't achieve that same level of heightened consciousness as consistency. So many people who find themselves mentally addicted to a psychedelic become quite depressed and anxious because they are forced to subsist in normal boring sobriety more frequently, as opposed to be participating in the euphoric wonderful trip that they had and are in pursuit of. So that is what psychedelic addiction kind of looks like. While it is not a physical condition wherein if you suddenly remove the compound you're going to have a physical response to, but the mind is a very powerful thing. So by very forcefully or very quickly removing a psychedelic compound from someone who is mentally latched onto that compound, their brain can convince them that they need to be having a physical reaction to the lack of this compound and can make them sick. I mean, it's not entirely uncommon for people who are depressed to have lower immune responses because, well, the brain suppresses the body in cases like that. And this isn't a video about depression, but depression is a very common side effect of people who do become mentally reliant on psychedelic substances. So the bottom line here is that you need to be expressing caution and practicing safe tripping techniques whenever you are going to ingest a psychedelic. Because while no psychedelic is going to create a physical dependency in the same way that something such as alcohol or hell, even heroin is going to create, that doesn't mean that psychedelics are completely without risk, because you can become mentally reliant on being high or being tripping on a psychedelic. And there are countless examples of people who have found themselves in this position because either they didn't know what they were doing when they started, or they had convinced themselves that that'll never happen to me. It can happen to you. It'll happen to anyone if you're not careful. So I hope that clarified a few things. If you have any further questions about psychedelic addiction or psychedelics in general, you know where to leave them. And if you would do me the favor of hitting the like button, and especially because you've made it this far in the video, definitely hit subscribe. I will see you in the next one. Peace.